Israeli Air Force conducts large strike on Houthi targets since outbreak of the war. This time they targeted the Sana'a airport, 2 power stations, alongside other military targets. Again, that's according to Israel, the military targets, because Israel doesn't have a lot of relevant intel when it comes to the military targets inside of Yemen, let alone the fact that the strategic weapons that they use to target Israel can be easily launched from anywhere in Yemen. And Yemen's geography is very complicated. And Israel already admits that it's tough. It's a tough nut to crack. Yemen, also the United States and the Genocide Coalition, they know that too when it comes to Yemen. However, Israel is on a high. They're trying to impose their will. They're trying to achieve an image of victory, despite the fact that they are being targeted from within. Really, there are more and more calls from within Israeli society to refuse serving. Now there were more people even in the Israeli rail stations asking people
in the letter that we will
serve in the Israeli army.
They were asking for.
There was this one video that I wanted to share with you about, reservists in the Israeli army who served recently, now going everywhere, a group of them across Israel, to call on armed, basically, soldiers and other people from the population, asking them not to serve. Israel already has a massive problem when it comes to the army. Tens of thousands of killed and wounded. 25% of reservists officially refuse to serve. That's in published statistics coming from Israel. The Orthodox community refuse to serve as well, and they are unable to recover from that. All of what they're doing now is a show to show the other nations and the world, we're still here and we're still capable to do stuff, although they're being destroyed from within. So I wanted to share this video quickly with you of these actions taking place inside of Israel.
To sign on to our letter demanding an end to the war and a total hostage deal. We state in the letter that we will not continue to serve if this continues. And many of us, myself included, have stopped serving.
I came back from my first round of Miluim, and I knew that I wasn't going to go back after I saw the way that the war was being run by a leadership that I had no faith in.
It's potentially a scary thing to be going out and signing soldiers on a letter like this, but every day that we're at war is worse than any reaction that could possibly happen from doing an action like this.
I was not in Gaza, I was in the north, but I understood even from the rhetoric of the people that I was with. Fortunately, we didn't have any incidents where I was, but the rhetoric of the people that I was with was coming straight from the government of everybody. There's no innocence in Gaza. Everybody's a terrorist or a potential terrorist, and there's no reason to put any doubt on if people there are terrorists. We just have to kill it's okay to kill everybody, and that's something that certainly doesn't reflect my values.
That's becoming more of a norm. Now, the problem with that is there were always people who refused to serve inside of Israel. We'll call them the refuseniks, basically. They always had a movement, but this movement started to gain more momentum following Benjamin Netanyahu's judicial reform attempts. And now it started to gain even more momentum than the early days of the war, because Netanyahu already had problems from day one. There were reports of 2,000 soldiers leaving Gaza, commanders being arrested, people fleeing the war, people fleeing the country. Don't forget, millions of Israelis fled the country too. But now more people who are still remaining and who actually served are outright going there to the streets, calling people, do not serve in this army. It's not getting anything. And the problem is, you're talking about soldiers who actually served in this recent genocide, right? at different levels. And that's becoming more and more problematic for Israel. So they're doing all of these actions inside of Syria, occupation in Syria, multiple targetings inside of Lebanon, and the continuation of the genocide in Gaza, now an expansion to more targets in Yemen, all to try and intimidate the region and to portray it in everyone's minds, really, that this is the new Israeli era that we're talking about. Now, a big part of that is the lack of sufficient response. And when I say the lack of sufficient response, that's a lack of sufficient response from everyone, from every single country under the sun, but primarily the countries surrounding Israel and the countries that did not take enough action to stop this genocide. Now, with Yemen have proven time after time that they do not stop. No calculations will stop them. And the good thing about Yemen, or the thing that they have that works to their advantage, is the fact that they have the strategic missiles to hurt Israel, and they have the geographical location to hurt Israel's economy too. They have the strategic missiles, they have the strategic drones, and they have the relevant Navy power to target, or Navy missiles to target the ships that are linked with Israel to hurt Israel economically. Land to sea missiles. Now, when it comes to all of that, Israel is very much worried about the fact that they are unable to respond sufficiently. But when it comes to Yemen, Yemen is continuing with their responses. So today they had a declaration after the Israeli attacks in which they stated, well, we're going to continue targeting Israel. No one's going to stop us, and nothing is going to stop us. They had this statement coming from their press office saying that, well, their political bureau, saying that we will continue to meet escalation with escalation without calculations or retreat. That means Israel, the Yemenis are not worried about any potential escalations coming from the Israeli side. And that also means that we're looking at potentially Yemen entering the sixth phase of the escalation. Because so far, Yemen had 5 phases of escalation. The first, second, third, fourth, and fifth happened during the past 14 months. Now, or 13 months now, 15 months, excuse me, or approximately. But now, if they reach the 6th phase, this means more things could be targeted inside of Israel, and that could potentially include strategic infrastructure inside of Israel, or a more aggressive attack, more aggressive attacks coming from Ansarullah. So far, their attacks are like a missile or 2 a day, a couple of drones, depends on the situation or the type of response that Israel has against them. The expansion, of course, in the sea, that's a big part of their phases escalation. But now we could be talking about potentially power grids inside of Israel, or maybe a civilian infrastructure that is very strategic to Israel. Because now Israel is targeting their power grids in a heavy manner, power stations, and the airport. Well, Ansarullah could say, well, now everything when it comes to Israel is a legitimate target. So far, though, following the recent and most aggressive attack coming from Israel, we didn't have the Yemeni response yet. But what we did hear is that they are telling the Israelis, expect a response within the next several hours. What would that be? To what level will they go? And what will Israel do after that? And that's the bigger problem here, because Israel can carry out these attacks, but how long can they carry them out for? They have been committing a genocide and massacres in Gaza for the past 14 months, and Hamas haven't been defeated. Now more Israelis are questioning, okay, well, what if Hamas doesn't submit. There was an article published in one of the Israeli newspapers. Well, what if Hamas doesn't submit? What if Hamas doesn't agree to a deal? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Are we going to let the Israelis die again inside of Gaza? Because the more time goes by, the more Israelis get killed. And many people need to understand that Israel, from an external perspective or from reading the news, is different to Israel internally and how things are from within the state. Israel is a torn country from a societal perspective, from a political perspective, and from a military perspective as well. Outright refusal coming from all walks of life against the state, lack of trust for the first time in the military establishment, total lack of faith, and even asks to request to assassinate the prime minister, people launching grenades on his house from within Israel, unprecedented networks or levels of networks of Israeli agents working for Iran against their own country. All of these things indicate that Israel is falling apart from within, let alone its damned reputation globally. However, when it comes to the Yemeni front in particular, and of course we still have the background of the Iranian response, the more tensions happening in Syria, and with Hezbollah, things could explode at any moment too and escalate, not even between Israel and Hezbollah only, but between Israel and the Lebanese army even. Because, many people inside of Lebanon now are saying, well, what is the Lebanese army doing with constant breaches, especially seeing as the agreement that they've had with Israel calls for the army to deploy and Hezbollah not to have military presence over the ground to the south of the Litani, something that they would have a back door for. But there are questions there, and there are more tensions, and things could explode. However, on the Yemeni front, which is the hottest front at the moment, we are expecting very, very tense days ahead.